Hey there, I'm back. This is Ron on lesson 3 of my commercial property series. And this lesson is where we start talking about how to buy commercial properties with nothing down. I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite techniques here. Now, in case you missed the other 2 lessons, go back and review them. If you are not a Gold Club member, you can go to ronsgoldclub.com, get on there, and those 2 last lessons will be posted. And we covered a lot, so you probably want to go back and catch up before you go any further if you haven't already done so. Now, in the last lesson I told you what I look for and why, and that I'm only looking for problem properties and what that means. And now let's take a look at how we would go about structuring the deal to make it financeable or fundable, and some of the offers that are available to us to do that. Now look, I've got 14 different ways that I teach in my 4-day event on how to buy commercial property with nothing down. But I'm going to go through about 6 on this series, and that certainly was enough to keep you thinking for a while. But I'll tell you, this first one that I like, I use heavily when it's applicable. Now, the term is subordination. So let me start by saying you will not use this technique with any property that you have to pay all cash for. This is only going to work if the seller is willing to take back part of the purchase price, and many will, on a seller carryback financing, and you go elsewhere to get part of the purchase price in cash. Now, I'm going to show you an example. I've got several properties that I've done this with. Subordination is something that I learned in the residential field way back in the early 80s. Bought a lot of houses using this technique, but I'm going to show you how we applied it to a small office building in Myrtle Beach, and maybe it'll hit home for you on how you can apply it to whatever it is you want to buy. Now guys, I'm telling you, if you are a professional, say you're a dentist or a CPA or a chiropractor, and you're looking for your own office building, this is how I would buy it. If you're looking for a strip center, this is how I would buy it, and then without using your money. So here we go. First, what is subordination? And the answer is, it's very simple. It's any time the seller will take back a second mortgage, allowing you to go get a new first mortgage using their property as collateral. So let me say that again. We're going to go borrow the money to get the seller the down payment they want, plus any cost that we need to renovate the project, using the seller's property as collateral. Now yes, this does mean that somebody's got to go to the bank and or a private lender to get that first mortgage. But it also means that that first mortgage is a lot smaller percentage of the purchase price than if we had to go to the bank and get it, usually. It also means that the seller is staying in the deal for at least a short period of time and knows full well that you're going to go get that first mortgage as a condition of your purchase. Now, what's the seller get out of it? Well, they get some cash, usually, at closing, plus they get a sale, plus they get a receivable that's owed to them later in the form of the second mortgage that you're going to offer them. Now, up on the screen right now, you'll see a picture of a property that I bought in Myrtle Beach with a student partner of mine, and it was a daycare center. I think 6,000 square feet. They were using it for a daycare center. The seller notified my partner that he would like to sell, and he indicated flexibility. Now, I'll put the numbers up here so you can see them. His asking price was $650,000 for the property. He was not very flexible about the price, and frankly, we knew that it was worth considerably more than that if we converted it to an office building, which was our true intent. We really weren't looking at this property as an investment so much as we needed an office space in Myrtle Beach, and this one came to our attention. So it was a 6,000 square foot daycare center, as you can see on the board here. The price was $650,000, but the guy needed $400,000 down because that's what he owed the bank. He had a $400,000 first. He didn't want to be in the daycare business. He wanted to get out of it, and his whole motivation was to get that loan paid off, but he would gladly take a second mortgage back if we could come to the closing with enough to pay that off. So I told my partner, who told him, We'll do that under the condition that you take back a second mortgage for the $250 with no payments and no interest for 2 years. And he aptly agreed, which tells me we probably paid too much or could have got a better deal, but we had no problem getting that offer accepted. So again, we offered him $650 with $400 down and $250,000 on a second mortgage, subordinate to new financing, due and payable in 2 years with no payments and no interest. Our goal was to buy the property, to renovate it, and then to either refinance it or sell it. But frankly, we had another project going on at that time, and we felt strongly that we'd have enough cash flow out of that other project within 2 years to pay off this debt anyway. And I also knew, and you ought to know this as well, anytime you make an agreement with the seller, an individual, and you create a term, you can always go back and change that term. See, there was no reason for me to pay that off in 2 years except my deal with the seller. Well, I knew in my mind, worst case, I'd go back, throw a little bit of money at it and get it extended for another couple of years. So that 2-year balloon did not bother me at all. Now, how did we fund this? Here's the catch and the key. We went to the bank and I got a new first mortgage for $450,000 on a $650,000 purchase price. Now, I don't know what loan to value that is, but the bank saw the contract for $650,000 and they saw that I was borrowing $450,000 and the seller was taking back $250,000. They didn't care because the seller was the one putting the skin in the game in this case. They saw I wouldn't put up a down payment, but they saw that they weren't in it by themselves. So the seller lent me $450,000, out of which came $400,000 to pay the seller off for his down payment, but simultaneously his underlying loan got paid off, so he didn't get any cash at closing, but he did get rid of that debt. And of course, he got back a $250,000 second mortgage. We brought home $37,997 cash from that loan. So we borrowed $450,000, $37,797 was left over, and we used that to put into the renovation of the property. So the total financing on the property was $450,000 first, with a $3,700 a month payment and a $250,000 second with no payment. So when it was all over, we owed $700,000 on the property, which, by the way, appraised for $850,000 as soon as we did the renovation to it, which we knew that it would do. Now, I went to the bank to get the money, friends, but you didn't. I mean, this could have just as easily been done with a private lender if you would have preferred it that way. Today, if I had to do it all over again, I'd have probably just went and got a private lender to put up the money at 7% interest as we do on residential houses. Now, take a look at the numbers on your screen and look at this as if this was a building you were buying for your own use. And let's say you needed 2,000 square feet of office space or chiropractor space or whatever space, and you had a 6,000 square foot building. We could have rented out 4,000 of the 6,000 and gotten about $5,000 a month out of it, which would have easily covered our $3,700 a month mortgage payment. So what I just showed you is a way to buy a property, have the debt to purchase all of it covered by the income for leasing out part of it and getting free rent in the process. In fact, I think back, I used the same technique way back in 1985 to buy my first office building. I bought a convenience store building. I can't remember, I think it was a total of about 3,000 square feet, and I put my office in one end, and I rented out the offices on the other end, and I was sitting there rent free because I bought it cheap. Now that's a key, guys, you got to buy it cheap. Frankly, the example I'm showing you is a little more than I would have normally paid for one of these deals, because I know that the cheaper you buy it, the easier it is to make the math work. In this case, because he took back the $250,000 with no payments and no interest, I didn't have a payment issue. But remember, be very careful. Don't offer the seller payments on a second when you know you've got to have payments on a first. You do not want to put yourself in a position to where you're wondering why you bought the property. So the key is that this will work on any kind of property with almost all equity or free and clear. I think in this particular case, it didn't have, it wasn't free and clear, and I borrowed more than I'd like to have borrowed because I didn't have any choice. The only way I could have bought the place was to borrow the $400,000. If you think about it, if the property would have been free and clear, and I'd had a flexible seller, let's say I had a seller that wanted $100,000 down, I would have just went to the bank and borrowed about $150 on it first, and had the seller carry back the balance with no payments and no interest for 2 years or more, and would have really had a sweet deal. In this case, I didn't have any choice. It was to go borrow the $400 or borrow nothing, and we wanted the office building bad enough to go borrow the $400. So that's what I did. I've used this subordination technique on all kinds of properties all over the country. And I tell you, when you understand it, it's one that you definitely will want to put into your portfolio of techniques. Whenever I see a property that's FSBO owned, that's got a problem, or the seller's got a problem, and it's free and clear, my absolute first choice of offers is some kind of a subordination offer. Okay, let's go to the second way to buy properties with nothing down in this lesson, and that is use part of the seller's property to raise the money to pay the down payment to buy all of the seller's property. Now that's not what I was talking about with subordination. It is, but in this case I'm not asking the seller to take back a second mortgage. This is a different technique. It does not involve subordination. So listen up and see if you can grasp it. In order to explain it, I'm going to show you a picture of a map. The map will not impress you. It's just a map. But if you'll take a look at the map, you'll see there's a blue circle there around 32 acres in an 800-acre parcel. Now that's important because the 32 acres in that circle is what made this whole deal work. So let me put the numbers up here for your benefit and you can try to follow me. All right, we had an 800-acre parcel in Dallas, Texas. It was owned by an individual, an elderly man who owned a lot of land and had sold it all off, and a lot of it with owner financing. We agreed to pay $11 million. Don't let that scare you off. $11 million for the entire 800 acres. And the down payment that he asked for was $1.2 million on an $11 million purchase. And he agreed that, well, he agreed with our insistence that we would put a release clause on each parcel by the acre equal to what we paid for that property by the acre. For example, if we agreed to pay $10,000 an acre, or whatever that is per square foot, let's say $2 per square foot. If I was paying $2 per square foot for the land, I would simply put it right in the offer that any part of that land that I wanted to release at any time would be released for $2 per square foot. Did you get that? I hope you got that. If I am paying $2 a square foot, I have a clause that I put in there that says I can release any part of it by paying him off in cash at $2 per square foot. Now, back to this 32 acres again. I don't know how much 32 acres is, but what I do remember is that for $750,000, we did the math, and we knew that we could get that 32 acres released for $750,000. We also knew that that 32 acres was a prime retail area right beside a brand new school, catty corner from a hospital that they were building. So we had the 32-acre parcel appraised, and it appraised for $5 million by itself without the rest of the property. Remember, we were paying $11 million for the entire 800 acres. We got the 32-acre appraised by itself for $5 million, and we knew that the release amount on that property was $750,000. So I said to myself, if you've got a $5 million appraisal, why don't we go to the bank and borrow $3 million on that appraisal, which is what we did. I borrowed a $3 million loan from the bank, and on the screen are the numbers. So watch this closely. I borrowed $3 million on 32 acres because I could. I had the appraisal to justify the value, and I had a release clause that says if I paid the seller $750 or $50,000 that he'd have to release that parcel. So at closing, the $3 million came to the closing table, $750,000 came out to pay the seller, and 1.2 million came out to pay the down payment for the rest of the 800 acres. So we literally used part of the seller's property to borrow the money to buy all of the seller's property, and had a bunch of money left over, which we used for other projects. So here's the key. Number one, it must be the type of property that can be, so where you can release it in pieces like this. Now, my friends, this is not just work on land. I had a project one time where I had 6 duplexes on it, and I did the same thing. I put it in the offer that for the down payment that one of the duplexes would be, or 2 of the duplexes would be released free and clear. I bought them cheap, and all I did was divide the price by 6, and that's the amount that I applied to the 2. So as part of the offer, when I bring you the down payment to buy the other properties, I want the 2 properties released free and clear, because my intent was to go get a loan on those 2 properties for enough to pay the down payment on the other 3, and literally used 2 of his 6 units for collateral to borrow the money to buy the entire 6 units. Now again, he had to take back seller financing to do that, but he only took back as collateral the 4 units, not the 2. I hope you got that. The bank used 2 units for collateral to get some money. He used the other 4 units for collateral, but he got a down payment, which is why he released the 2 units that the bank used. This thing works with big tracts of land. I always want release clauses in big tracts of land so that I can release part of it anytime I want. It works with multiple building properties like I just described. It also works with properties with a lot of houses. Let's say you come across one seller and he's got a whole bunch of houses. I just had a student, Gene Eccles, that just did this in Central Florida. Made an offer to seller. They have several houses all together, but each and every one of them has a release clause, and he can go take one of those properties and borrow the money to get the down payment to pay the seller for the down payment for all of the rest of them. So I know it's a little complicated, I get it, but the key points are: you've got to negotiate reduced price, you've got to negotiate as small a down payment as you possibly can, but then you've got to be able to see through how much can I borrow on this piece, and is that enough to get the down payment, pay the down payment for the rest of it. All right, well, if that hasn't screwed you up, I'll try to do an even better job on the next lesson. So coming up is 2 more ways to buy property with nothing down. And remember, if you haven't joined the Gold Club yet, you might want to go do that and make sure we're not on the spam list. And watch for a package in the mail. I'm going to send you a package in the mail here pretty soon, and it'll tell you about all this 4-day event where I actually get a chance to spend time with you, teaching you this stuff in 4 long days instead of trying to do it in 15 or 20-minute sessions like this. I'm doing the best I can with the time that I've got here, and I know that some of this stuff is confusing to you, but don't let it get to you. It's not that hard to learn, and very, 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 very important to you to learn it. Truly, this commercial property stuff is where you build enough wealth and income to support you for the rest of your life on 1 or 2 projects. So worth hanging around, worth getting out of your comfort zone a little bit to bring it in. And by the way, guys, you will not be buying single-family houses without running past commercial property opportunities all day, every day. You can't be out there driving around in your community without spotting them. Finding them will be easy, as you'll see in an upcoming lesson, but they're all over. It's not about finding them, it's about recognizing the opportunity that sits there when you see something that looks like that it's got a problem or the seller's got a problem. So more on that later. That's enough for now. I'll see you on the next lesson.